Hello, and welcome to the Overreaction Theater. Ladies and germs, gals and ghouls, jokers of all ages, welcome to Mayhem Mondays. Welcome to this brand new show coming to you weekly from now until the end of the fantasy season with my overreactions to the weeks of football. We finally got a little taste of the preseason, so I'm ready to break down 3 fantasy takeaways for each of the games. Before we begin, please go join our community and become a content creator yourself, or if you just want to join up so that you can hang out with some experts and maybe a joker, go sign up to fantasyfootballadviceforum.com. Use the promo code JOKER420 and you can get yourself 10% off. Actually, it's still 20% off right now, so you can get 20% off until it changes back and get access to all kinds of exclusive content, including that's where all my articles are. You can only find them there. You can interact with myself and our great group of content creators. And if you so desire, you'll have a great platform for you to become a content creator yourself. And as always, like I say, make sure to go like, subscribe, comment, and share the video. So today, just finally got a taste of the NFL. I won't be recapping Houston or New England. Houston, New England, or Minnesota, Seattle, because I covered those on the Friday episodes. So if you want, you can go and check those out there. We'll start off kind of a bummer of a game, but it was Denver versus Arizona. The Cardinals squeaked out a win here. It was 18-17 for the Cardinals. So fantasy takeaway number 1, Russell Wilson. He had some good and he had some bad. You know, there's still some work to do in Sean Payton's offense. And I think the biggest thing, and this is right into my fantasy takeaway from the game number 2, the Broncos O-line, the offensive line is going to need to do much better protecting Russell Wilson. Some of the better throws that he did make were on the run, so hopefully Sean Payton can maybe work some of that into the offense. But honestly, the Cardinals were feasting for the most part, and this was, whether it was Russ or later in the game, the Cardinals basically won this game on defense. And, to say that the Broncos offense is anywhere close to where it needs to be to compete in this division with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers, they're a far cry still. I think they're going to be competing for last in the division. And, speaking of finishing last, the Cardinals are set up to finish last because I made the joke before, Clayton can't carry a tune and Colt's not the real McCoy. David Blau right now might be their best quarterback on the roster. So, if Kyler Murray is not back within 4 to 6 weeks and they start off 1-5, 1-4, like what's the point of even if they start 0-4, what's the point of bringing Kyler Murray back at that point? Like, what would stop them from tanking, trading Kyler, securing that number 1 spot and drafting Caleb Williams next year? We've seen them do it before. That's how they got Kyler Murray in the first place. Moving right along, Commanders Browns. I was interested to see how the Commanders wide receivers were going to shake out because there's a lot of mouths to feed when you consider Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and also Curtis Samuel, and also Antonio Gibson. But my number 1 fantasy takeaway from Commanders Browns was Voldemort's got shaky feet. He's not looking comfortable in the pocket. And, you know, I'm stealing that joke from fantasy footballers. Sue me. Deshaun Watson, he who shall not be named. I think people are counting on him rebounding this season to his form that he had in Houston. And he did run the ball effectively. But my biggest problem with Deshaun Watson is that, like I mentioned, he's just got shaky feet right now. When you see him drop back in the pocket, it's those motor feet that you see some quarterbacks have, where instead of setting their feet and climbing the pocket, getting ready to throw, the feet are just constantly jittering. And I saw a lot of that from Deshaun Watson, which just, tells me that he's still working his way back. He's not 100% to where he needs to be to essentially regain the form that he had in Houston. Now his ADP is enough that I don't think it's going to absolutely crush you if you draft him in fantasy, but I also am not expecting him to just like walk into a 4,500 yard, 35 touchdown season. Besides Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and Donovan Peoples-Jones and Cedric Tillman are all kind of wide receiver twos competing for that job and working in and out of the slot. Like I said, we'll see how all of that shakes out. You also have David Njoku there. I mean, ultimately, this offense is going to run through Nick Chubb. My second takeaway for Commanders-Browns, Jacoby Brissett was slightly better than Sam Howell, but Sam Howell shows a lot of potential. I think he could retain the job over Brissett. Brissett did throw kind of an ugly interception, but for the most part, Brissett just, he looked like a veteran that had a little bit more command of the offense. I think it would take a lot for Sam Howell to, it would have to be some pretty ugly struggles for him to be just replaced outright by Brissett in terms of play. But I think, God forbid if Sam Howell is injured for any reason, then, the Washington Commanders are still going to have a competent quarterback to man the field. And I think they're going to push Dallas for third in this division, because I have it Eagles, Giants, Commanders, and Cowboys. I just really don't like what they're doing with the coaching for Dallas. And then just a quick shout out to, he's an undrafted free agent safety, Ronnie Hickman for the Browns. He's out of Ohio State, though, so he's the hometown kid. So this is an IDP shout out. We don't always do a lot of IDP fantasy content here at the Fantasy Joker. So I just thought I would throw that out. He had 2 interceptions. There were a handful of safeties, weirdly, this week that had 2 interceptions. And he was one of them. So just shout out to Ronnie Hickman, because you probably won't hear his name on too many podcasts or shows. Next up, Atlanta Falcons, Miami Dolphins. So my number one fantasy takeaway, I'm nervous about Devon Achane. I'm not liking where he is on the depth chart. I forgot all about Pee-wee Myles Gaskin, and that's the final truth. Shout out to Last Podcast on the Left. There's a crossover I never thought would happen. Fantasy Football and Last Podcast on the Left. If you listen to them, go check me out drop a line in the comments. Let me know that you're also a fellow Last Podcast listener. That's how I met my wife. So, like I was saying, though, big side tour there. I'm just nervous about Achane. I've got so many shares of Achane in Dynasty. I've got tons of him in Best Ball. I even took him in Scott Fishbowl, I'm pretty sure. I'd have to double check, but I'm like 90% sure I have him there. So I have Achane all over the place. I love him as a player. He's so fast. He reminds me a little bit of Warwick Dunn, where even though he's despite the size, he's so quick and agile, but he also has some toughness. So despite that the positive takeaway besides the depth chart position and the fact that he had a couple little pop plays, but nothing really major. It's not like he broke a home run or anything, which, you would have liked to see. But the fact that he showed toughness and the ability to run a gap, I thought that was very impressive. I think that bodes well for his long-term success. So hopefully, if you do have him on a roster like I do, you have the running back depth to take the hit, because I don't think that he's just going to walk into it and be the week 1 starter. I do think it will take some time for him to ultimately win that job. My number 2 fantasy takeaway was Desmond Ridder looked solid. Nothing spectacular, but it was pretty good. I forgot to mention the score here. It was Falcons 19, Dolphins 3. I think I forgot the score of the last one too. Doesn't really matter. It's a preseason game. Who cares? Falcons 19, Dolphins 3. The only thing is, Dolphins kind of looked ugly in this one. And the only thing that looked uglier than the Dolphins' preseason performance was Mike McDaniels running across the field after.
The Atlanta Falcons get the win over the Dolphins, 19-3.
Let's go!
Man, what was that? It looked like there's a guy, shout out to I should have researched better, but he does those running memes on TikTok. He's got the spaghetti guy. That's what Mike McCarthy looked like, running across the field to shake Arthur Smith's hand. That was my number 3 fantasy takeaway. I guess I didn't have anything that important. Moving right along. It's going to be a short one today. Packers, Bengals. The Bengals. The Packers 36, Bengals 19. Number 1 fantasy takeaway. Jordan Love is for real. I have pounded the table all off season for Jordan Love. Look, it's not even about Jordan Love. It's Packers don't miss on quarterback. That's just what they do. They draft winning quarterbacks. Whether it's people forget the history, and now I've got the names cemented in my head because I've said this so many times now. The Magic Man, Don Majkowski, Mr. Lynn Dickey. The Packers actually have a series of successful quarterbacks not named Brett Favre, Bart Starr, Aaron Rodgers. So the ceiling is the Hall of Fame 15 to 20 year starter, but the floor is an above average 7 to 10 year starter, because that's what basically all of the other Packers quarterbacks through history became between Bart Starr and Brett Favre. So yes, they've had basically this run, this immaculate run from Favre to Rodgers to now Love, but people forget that before that, and I'm a little bit of a football historian. I like to look at those old school game tapes back in the day. Between Bart Starr and Brett Favre, you had, like I said, Magic Man Don Majkowski, go look it up, and Mr. Lynn Dickey. They were both they weren't Hall of Fame elite, the best of the best, but they were very good quarterbacks, and in their time, they would have been excellent for fantasy. So Jordan Love is for real. Sean Clifford also looks like a decent backup. He did have a pick 6. So, it's a young team. They're going to have mistakes, but ultimately, it was just nice to see Jordan Love look competent in this offense, especially when you saw some of the young rookie quarterbacks and how effective they were over the weekend. My number 2 fantasy takeaway here was Dobbs. Romeo Dobbs had very good chemistry with Jordan Love. He's looking like the solid PPR guy there. I did also like the rookie Jaden Reed getting involved. It bodes well for the young wide receiver core. If Dobbs and Reed are able to be successful, that is good for Christian Watson, because the last thing that we want is just to see continuous double and triple coverage on the right side with, man safety over top on Christian Watson, because those big plays downfield are not going to be available. But if you have to also cover Romeo Doubs in that middle zone and Jaden Reed, who was showing, a lot of ability to be adaptable because they were using him on like jet sweeps and that kind of thing. So if he can be an effective, versatile player that way, that will really help open up this offense. And then you add in Aaron Jones as a pass catcher out of the backfield. The rookie tight ends are working their way in. This could be a much better offense earlier than I think people are expecting. The rest of the NFC North is thinking maybe that it's their time and opportunity finally to win the division now that Aaron Rodgers is gone, and Jordan Love might just be like, shut that door. The last thing I wanted to say, number 3 takeaway from this game, not much on the Bengals side, but I did notice that Chris Evans, I thought, was a much more effective runner than Chase Brown, who seems to be like the fantasy darling. Brown had 8 for 12. He only averaged 1.5 yards per carry. He did have the receptions, which was nice to see. He had 3 for 33. That's where he had that little pop play that's made the highlight reel for the preseason. But Chris Evans, on the other hand, went 7 for 49 and averaged 7 yards per carry. So if that trend continues through the preseason, then just keep your eyes out, because it might be, Captain America Chris Evans that's actually the backup to Joe Mixon and not Chase Brown, like everybody is hoping. The other one, just a quick bonus to McPherson. Evan McPherson had 4 for 4, including a 51-yarder. So he carried the Bengals offense here, but Packers just looked so good. So good. Keeping it chugging. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Steelers 27, Buccaneers 17. Number 1 fantasy takeaway, Kenny Pickett looks much improved, which is very nice to see. I'm a big Steelers fan, as you can see behind me. I have been my whole life. And I've been much chagrined since Lamar Jackson was drafted, because at the time that Lamar Jackson was drafted, the Steelers should have drafted him. I stand by that. I'll say that over and over. They drafted a no-name safety that is not even on the team anymore. I'm like 95% sure, because I think I looked it up to get confirmation bias on that they should have drafted Lamar. But it was like, even if the safety had ended up being the next iteration of Troy Polamalu, the quarterback is the most important position on the field. It made no sense. Lamar Jackson is clearly an electric MVP, former MVP. Like, imagine if he was on the Steelers with that offense. So I kind of struggled with, and then we had to watch Broke Down Ben, helmet, catching helmets on the helmet, Mason Rudolph. And then they draft the kid Kenny Pickett, and I know he's the hometown kid and people were happy about it. I just still was like, honestly, I thought it was at the time a mistake, because it seemed like a repeat of the Mason Rudolph drafting. I had wanted them to take Malik Willis at the time. I think, long-term Malik Willis has obviously not taken over the job in Tennessee. So I think it turned out to be, it's fine. Whatever, it is what it is. But Kenny Pickett's looking good out there. He's making some plays, making some throws. Obviously, George Pickens playing like a whole man right now. So that's nice to see. That's definitely helping. But I think Kenny Pickett is going to be able to support this offense to the tune of 20 to 25 touchdowns, just, enough to be league average, and enough so that people who are drafting George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson are going to get the value ultimately, from where they're drafting these players. My number 2 takeaway for this game was that Baker Mayfield looked a lot better than Kyle Trask. I don't think Kyle Trask is a starter in the NFL. Now, I still think they're likely to finish last in their division, but I think that they're going to compete in a lot of games. I think this team's actually going to be better than I think. I mean, the offensive line still has some pretty juicy pieces, led by Tristan Wirfs. You've got the two stalwart wide receivers in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Maybe Rashad White is a guy. Maybe Cade Otton can provide, some third target juice. It's hard to put faith in, Baker Mayfield. And then if he tanks in any kind of way, there's nobody behind him. Like I mentioned, when I watched this preseason game, it was very clear to me, like Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask. So it's like, if Kyle Trask has to play in any capacity, the Bucs are cooked. They're totally cooked. And then my number 3 takeaway, this is for all the Jaylen Warren truthers out there. My apologies, but Jaylen Warren is fool's gold. And I do not recommend, now if his ADP starts to rise, I'm out. I'm also out if this is like a 10-man league and you're counting on him being anything more than a sometimes flex play. Look, Steelers are going to Steeler. I've been watching the Steelers my whole life. You think I just was lamenting how they keep drafting these pocket quarterbacks instead of these mobile quarterbacks that have so much more juice and energy? Yeah, Steelers are going to steal it. They're just going to keep doing what they do. They're going to feed Najee 100 million times. Jaylen Warren, truthers, are going to pound the table for him to get more carries, and he never, ever will. He's very much, they're like always splitting it 50-50 with Najee in the preseason. Yeah, because it's the preseason, and they're not going to overload Najee in the preseason, but the Steelers are still, even in the preseason, going to make Jaylen Warren split carries with Najee 50-50. Now, just imagine what happens in the regular season when they're like, okay, well, it's Najee's turn. It's Najee's turn. It's like unless Najee is tired or hurt, he's not coming out of that game. He's a 3-down back. That's what he does. He is fantastic as a runner. The stiff arms, boom. And with the upgrade in the block, I think his yard per carry is going to get an increase this year. Because the blocking's been terrible since he was drafted. I think people are like, oh, well, Ben peppered him with targets, and that's what helped. Yeah, because the offensive line was bad for like several years and then just kind of went unaddressed. And finally, we addressed it. So it's like we are expecting a really big boost for this offensive line. And in this game, it already showed, I think, that they are willing to pound the rock, just like always. But Jaylen Warren, like I said, if you're in like a 14-16 man league and you're drafting him at the end, or if you're drafting him as the Najee handcuff, fine. But if he creeps up to anything more than double-digit rounds, like if you start seeing Jaylen Warren in the 9th, run for the hills. There's no way. All right. We'll get right into this. Is a kind of a perfect segue. A running back I don't believe in to a running back I did not quite believe in, but I'm definitely starting to rise on. My number 1 takeaway from Lions-Giants. Final score 21 for the Lions, 16 for the Giants. Jahmyr Gibbs. We got a little taste of Jahmyr Gibbs, and from what I've seen in the joint practices, what I've seen in his deployment, I'm starting to be in on Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he could climb to being as high as like the number 2 target in this offense behind Amon-Ra St. Brown until Jameson Williams returns from suspension, who, I'll talk a little bit more about Jameson Williams as my 3rd takeaway here, but sticking with Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously he's electric. He's an amazing pass catcher out of the backfield. Now, I was hesitant it's funny because it's like I'm so in on A-Shane, but it's like because the draft capital was like so different. It's like, yeah, I can take my shot on A-Shane in like double-digit rounds, and it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. But if I'm wrong on Jahmyr Gibbs in the 4th round, that one's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot more. So I haven't really been in on Jahmyr Gibbs, but I've started to take a little bit more of him. I think, he's almost going to be successful by default because barring injury, the Lions are going to have to feed him almost just to save face. And he did go a lot higher, has potentially a lot more skills than DeAndre Swift, or maybe not skills, but like explosiveness. He's definitely quicker, I think. Swift does look good in Philadelphia, in my opinion. I'll talk about that later, but I didn't really like that they let go of Swift and Jamal Williams to then replace them with carbon copies in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And I guess I'm just not totally sold that it's that much of an upgrade, but I think I'm starting to buy in that, yeah, Montgomery's more talented, younger than Jamal Williams, even though Jamal really was like the heart and soul of that offense in a lot of ways. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is just a more explosive, faster version of Swift. And so I think there's going to be room for both of them. And I'm starting to rise on Gibbs. I was really out on the ADP for a long time, but he's starting to win me over. The other thing was just number 2 fantasy takeaway. Both defenses look improved. And the reason I bring that up is because I think, you always look for, hey, what are the bad defenses that I can play against? And the Lions were definitely last year one of the worst defenses that you could definitely play against most weeks. But I would just be wary of that. The Lions definitely looked like they were out for blood in terms of getting to the quarterback. Now the Giants still look really good on defense too. And they had a good defense last year. I think they could even be a little bit more improved. They forced an opening interception. The safety, I forget his name. I didn't mark it down, but he was one of the safeties that had 2 interceptions in a game, I believe. And both of these defenses, like I said, I'm not looking to stream against either of them necessarily in the beginning of the year. I guess kind of see how it plays out. But the Lions potentially, like I said, they could be much improved if they're able to be even middle of the pack. It could affect certain streaming options. And then my number 3 takeaway, I had mentioned it earlier, Jameson Williams. I'm out on Jameson Williams. And part of it for me is the suspension. I'm not eating the 6 games. There's no, with Kamara and his ADP, which was basically the same as Jameson Williams. It's like they're both going between rounds 9 and 11, essentially. Williams sometimes drops a little further if you're in a draft with more savvy players. But for the most part, he's going between rounds 9 and 12. And Kamara has creeped up a little bit, but I was drafting Kamara pre-suspension, knowing that there's no way he's eating. I never believed that Kamara was going to get more than 4 games, and then the fact that he only got 3, even better. And I'll talk about that situation as well later, but just the fact that already I'm eating the hole on my roster for 6 weeks. And this is obviously in any redraft kind of format. In Dynasty, I can understand taking that late shot and still hoping he develops. But the other thing was just that the announcers kept mentioning too that he seemed to lack separation based on as compared to himself when he came out of Alabama. So that's always something that had me concerned because he doesn't strike me as a big monster contested catch guy. So if he's not getting any separation, that could be an early warning sign that this situation just won't work out, unfortunately. Moving on, I think this one had everyone the most hot and bothered in the preseason. Bears, Titans, Bears 23, Titans 17. Man, Justin Fields to DJ Moore was my number one fantasy takeaway. And the only thing I can say is spicy, muy caliente. Holy Toledo. First play, first touch, DJ Moore just takes a screen to the house, 62 yards. And then my number 2 fantasy takeaway was Khalil Herbert, who's clearly the starting running back there right now. Housed another one. So Field had this amazing Madden stat line where it was like he had 3 passes, 3 for 3 for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was literally like a straight out of me playing Madden. So it was really funny. But very quickly breeze right through this one. Number 1, Justin Fields, DJ Moore, draft them. Beautiful stack. Number 2, Khalil Herbert, draft him. His ADP has shot way up. I was doing a best ball earlier today. They dropped what was it, the pup 3 or whatever it is, and Herbert, his ADP was formerly like you could get him in like double digit rounds. I saw him go as high as I think he went round 8. So he's gonna shoot right up to about that Rashad White, David Montgomery range now that it's been kind of like established that he's the starter. I would still be also drafting Roschon Johnson. I think it was established very clearly that they want to run Herbert 1, Roschon 2, and Deontay Foreman as the clear backup. And the number 3 fantasy takeaway for this game was Tyjae Spears looked good. He's, to me, the clear backup. If you want to go ahead and handcuff Derrick Henry at the end of your drafts, I don't hate it. I think Tyjae Spears would be the clear, the clear backup and beneficiary if anything, God forbid, were to happen to my king. Bills 23, Colts 19. Fantasy takeaway number 1, James Cook, still going too low. He's another one, his ADP that was creeping up. I think people are starting to realize the reports out of camp are glowing. The preseason performance, excellent. The offense, spectacular. The quarterback, immaculate. The situation, amazing. Like the sky's the limit for James Cook this year. So he's still definitely going. If he's going less than round 6, it's too low, because to me he's the starter for the Bills and he's explosive. Like, he's got juice. So I'm really starting to like James Cook. I haven't had a lot of him. I'm starting to be angry at myself for that one. That's definitely one I'm going to be adjusting going forward and drafting a lot more James Cook for sure. Number 2, Anthony Richardson is going to have the best rookie quarterback season. And it's partly because I think the Colts are just going to force it, whereas the other teams are going to kind of let it happen. But Houston has viable alternate quarterbacks, which I'll talk about later. Panthers, not so much. I think it's going to be between A-Rich and Bryce Young, but I think it's ultimately going to be A-Rich who takes it because of the running. Like, we already, even just in the preseason game, he had one run. It wasn't like a huge spectacular run or anything, but he just ran over the dude. Like, that's going to be one where guys are making business decisions on if they want to tackle Anthony Richardson in the open field or not. And you're going to see there's definitely going to be guys who are going to make that decision. No, thank you. And then my number 3 takeaway for this game was pay Jonathan Taylor. I don't want to hear the argument. Look, if you're one of these people that's like, oh, 0 RB and it's not a value, no, I don't want to hear it. It's a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, a team that has the cap space, that has not a lot of other offensive skill players. They don't have anybody else they have to pay. This team is going to be significantly worse if Jonathan Taylor is not available to them and not playing. They need to fix that situation. Just pay the man. Give him a 2-year contract for $30 million. It's $15 million a year. Do the same thing as Saquon. Make it like 24 with 6 in incentives, so that it's really like a 12-3. Like whatever you got to do. There's no conceivable reason that Jonathan Taylor should get out of this building or not play for them. And if it doesn't, it's gonna mess up their season. It's gonna mess up Anthony Richardson's rookie season, I think. Keeping it chugging. Jets, Panthers, Jets 27, Panthers 0. The only goose egg on this docket. And yeah, it's just, number one takeaway, the rookie quarterbacks were uninspiring. Bryce Young had 4 for 6 for 21 yards, and then they pulled him. Matt Corral finished the rest of the game. So we don't really know a lot about Bryce Young. The only thing I saw was that he was looking for Thielen in those like zones, and when he really needed the first down, he was looking for Thielen. So again, Thielen is going to be very necessary for this team on first downs and red zone. That's what it's going to be. Book it, especially those first beginning weeks while Jonathan Mingo is still working his way through like being a rookie and everything. Yeah. DJ Chark and Visca Chenault will pop up here and there, but it's Adam Thielen is going to be like the primary receiver for this team. My other takeaway, number 2, Michael Carter started, but Israel Abanikanda don't want none unless you got run, son. Abanikanda got a lot of run in this game, a lot more than Bam Knight. So I think the hierarchy, obviously excluding Breece Hall, who's at the tippy top, you're talking about Michael Carter is the primary backup, but Israel Abanikanda is the primary ball carrier. So the grinder, the guy that they're going to lean on for 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But Michael Carter is going to be very valuable, I think, especially in the early part of the season, because he is a pass catcher. And we saw it right away. He leaked out to the left, caught a beautiful pass, tuck it up. He's going to do that kind of stuff with Aaron Rodgers all day. All day. Especially in deeper leagues, make sure that you're getting Michael Carter at the end of your drafts. And then my third takeaway, is Zach Wilson good? Zach Wilson had a nice game. It's almost like, these highly drafted quarterbacks, and we'll talk about another one later, benefit from genuinely good coaching and having a mentor like Aaron Rodgers around and not having all the pressure of the world on you. It's almost like it allows you to soak things in and perform at a higher level. Crazy how that works. Next up, Jaguars, Cowboys. The biggest takeaway here, number 1, backup running backs, Tank and Deuce. Tank Bigsby looks really good. I still think Travis Etienne is the starter. Yes, Travis Etienne is still very much draftable. Yes, I still think he's going to have a good season. I just also think that there's room in this offense for another running back, a thunder to Etienne's lightning. And I think that it's really going to get split between Etienne and Bigsby. We did see a little bit of Dearness Johnson, but it was in a clear backup role, it felt like. So, I think it's really going to be Etienne 1, Bigsby 2. And then on the other side of it, Deuce Vaughn is just fun to watch. He looks like the new Darren Sproles. So I just really hope I think it's obvious he's going to make the roster. He's one of the scouts' kids. It would be kind of really terrible if they cut him, especially after he performed well in the preseason. But I think he could actually maybe be the backup to Tony Pollard and be kind of like a Darren Sproles type out there. My number 2 takeaway, though, was the Zach Martin is going to be key to the Cowboys' success. For what they want to do, especially with the inside zone running, they're going to need Zach Martin. That's kind of gone under the radar in terms of holdouts. They need to pay that man. He even though he's a year younger than me, which for the NFL is ancient, he still has juice. He's still got 2-3 years left in him. Offensive linemen do tend to last a little bit longer. So I do think they need to get Zach Martin back in on a 1 or 2 year contract. It's crucial to their line. He's still the best player on this line. You could argue Tyron Smith, but he's generally not available. So to me, it's still Zach Martin. And then the play of the week came from this game from the Maple Mahomes. What?
Here you go, Roy. Here's your opportunity. He sits back here to
just dodging tackles left and right. 4 guys miss, and he's got one draped around, and he just boom, straight to the end zone. My gosh, that was Nathan Rourke. Shout out to my countryman from Victoria, BC, a 2nd-round draft pick in the CFL. That's the Canadian Football League. And last year he was playing in the CFL for the BC Lions, and he won the Most Outstanding Canadian Award, which is not the main award. It's like a weird consolation prize award. It's like the MVP, but like only among the Canadians in the league. It's like a weird little clique. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of CFL, to be honest. If you've checked out Wildcard Wednesdays, you've heard me rant about it. If you haven't checked out Wildcard Wednesdays, go do that right now. All right. Wrap it up here. We got 4 more games. Try and breeze right through these. Eagles, Ravens. Ravens 20, Eagles 19. I'm ignoring the Gainwell reports. This is my first takeaway. DeAndre Swift looks good. He costs a little bit too much. I'm kind of willing to eat the price depending on my team construct. Rashad Penny will have a couple good games. He will also get injured, and then it'll be down to Swift and Gainwell. We'll see if Swift can hold up. The story on him has been that he can't. So Gainwell could emerge eventually as the starter. But reports out of camp are that he's already just beating them outright. I don't know if I believe that. I kind of need to see a little bit more before I bite into that one. Number 2, and it's very easy. Justin Tucker is the GOAT. Shout out to, one of my biggest rivals, best players of all time. Justin Tucker to me is the greatest kicker of all time. You could argue Vinatieri, and I get it because Vinatieri's got all the chips on his toe. But Justin Tucker, just like he's walking out here making 60-yarders in the preseason look easy. He could have hit that thing from 70, it felt like. And number 3, it's not really a fantasy takeaway, but just shout out Ravens. Extend their preseason win streak to 23 games, which is kind of unreal. Moving along, Chargers, Rams. Chargers 34, Rams 17. Quentin Johnston looks good. And you know what? The fact that you're going to have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Quentin Johnston all on the field at the same time, man, who are you going to guard in that? It's like, not only who are you going to guard, but it's like, how are you going to expect, I'm going to have one guy going to go one-on-one with Quentin Johnston. I'm also going to have another guy go one-on-one with Mike Williams. And then I'm also going to ask another guy to cover Keenan Allen, one of the best route runners in the NFL, one-on-one. It's not going to happen. Somebody's going to be loose on basically every play. And even if they're not like completely loose with separation, they're all like Quentin Johnston has already shown a propensity to be able to go up, get the ball. Mike Williams can definitely go up, get the ball. I think this offense is looking dangerous. I mean, you talk about Gerald Everett as an auxiliary player at the tight end position. You talk about Austin Eckler as the receiving threat out of the backfield. Like, how does Justin Herbert not go for 5,000 yards? But Quentin Johnson could legitimately have the best rookie wide receiver season. When you look at like JSN is in just as much of a crowded wide receiver room, but behind DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and with Geno Smith, and that team is not wanting to air the ball out the same way. Like, Kellen Moore is going to want to air the ball out. So you know that I could see Quentin Johnson very easily surpassing 1,000 yards and having like 8-9 touchdowns. That's very much within the realm of possibility. Number 2, Stetson Bennett. He looked good. Not great, but good. Like, he looked like a real solid, kind of reminds me of Minshew, where he's not like a franchise starter quarterback, but he's good enough to get you through games. We'll see if he can develop into more than that, but for right now, that's kind of how I view him. But I think at least it means that if for some reason Matt Stafford were to get injured again, I do think Stetson Bennett can at least like kind of support an offense, and more importantly, Cooper Kupp, who's the only really passing option that anyone cares about in this offense. I mean, Tyler Higbee, Puka Nacua, Van Jefferson, those are all nice auxiliary pieces that people are taking really late, but like the one that matters is Cooper Kupp. We want to make sure Cooper Kupp is taken care of. And then my number 3 fantasy takeaway, Elijah Dotson had 2 awesome runs, one where he's looking back at the guy as he's going in the end zone. That's how much room he had, and everyone's commenting about that. And I'm like, oh, you think that's nice, huh? You know what that was? That was a left outside stretch zone. That's what Tony Pollard succeeded in last season. If you look at, shout out to Jeremy Popolars, go follow him on Twitter, Popes FFH. He put out a chart, got the official Tony Pollard chart, and Tony Pollard to the left side on outside zone averaged 3 yards more per carry than any other gap. That was his favorite run, essentially. That's what Kellen Moore is bringing to the San Diego offense. If Elijah Dotson's doing that, what do you think Austin Eckler's going to do with those carries? Ooh, baby. Austin Eckler has already like crushed for the last 2 seasons. He could just walk right back into a number 1 running back finish for fantasy football. Just love Kellen Moore. Not a fan of Brian Schottenheimer, Mike McCarthy. Sorry, Cowboys fans. Last 2 games here, Chiefs Saints. Derek Carr looks sharp. I thought he looked like a big upgrade on Andy Dalton, even though it's just the preseason. I think it's clear and obvious he looks like a starting quarterback, and he looks capable. And I think that makes them the threat to win the division again. Especially when you look at Michael Thomas, looked healthy. Kamara looked good. So after that 3-game suspension, Kamara is, to me, going to walk right back into the starter job. Unfortunately, Kendre Miller did get hurt, so that was sad news to hear. It was a knee sprain, so he should hopefully be okay in terms of like available for week 1, but he's not. I keep saying when this happens, he's a rookie. He's now basically going to miss the whole training. He missed the whole training camp. He's going to miss the whole preseason, basically. He's not walking in and carrying 20 carries off the sidewalk on week 1. Like, it's just not going to happen. He's going to have a backup role, and he's going to effectively be in that backup role until Kamara gets back, and by the time Kamara gets back, forget about it. Now he's splitting the backup role between himself and Jamal Williams. And New Orleans is a community that will embrace Jamal Williams in the same way that Detroit did. So trust me, Jamal Williams is going to get his run. And then not a fancy takeaway, but man, Jameis Winston workouts and just Jameis Winston in general, always great for content, always hilarious.
What the fuck? 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 What the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, what is the trainer even trying to do there? He's like losing his glove, and then at the end, he's just kind of like shoving the bag, like trying to like lean on it and hold on. Like, what was even the point of that? Anyways, last game up here, knock this one out. Raiders 49ers. Raiders smashed the 49ers in this one, 34-7. I mean, number one, to me, the Trey Lance hate is overblown. I get it. He looks hesitant. He looks like he's lacking vision. He didn't look great. The touchdown pass was not a touchdown pass. It was an interception. The guy basically like intercepted and then like couldn't handle it and then just like kind of like threw it at the tight end. It looked weird, but it turned into a touchdown. He finished with 10 of 15, and he had that one touchdown, but I mean, look, the guy missed basically like his whole rookie season, and then he missed like I hate when armchair quarterbacks just decide that like, oh, this highly drafted quarterback is just toast. And we've seen it with Sam Darnold. We've seen it with like so many quarterbacks over the history of time. But I always call it Alex Smith syndrome. There are guys when you're not in that elite tier, and there are still myriad quarterbacks that belong in the NFL, are skilled players, are better than 99.9% of the other people that are trying to be NFL quarterbacks, but they're not as elite as like the top level, 1 percentile of that grouping of people. And so like when you're an NFL team, you have to recognize like, yeah, I might just end up with a Derek Carr and I have to build my team around Derek Carr. And there's situations where Derek Carr has looked terrible and people act like he's a bad quarterback. It's like, well, now he's with the Saints and he could very well have a career year this year if Michael Thomas stays healthy, Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson, Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara comes back. He's a receiving option out of the backfield. The situation, the coaching, and what surrounds the player often, like if you're not an elite level quarterback, that matters so much. Like all the quarterbacks that we've seen make it to a Super Bowl that weren't like super elite, had basically elite level defenses. You look as far back as like Trent Dilfer and the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, like he wasn't considered like an elite level quarterback. He's got a Super Bowl ring because the team built an offense around him. They built the defense to where the defense was like the true stalwart, the main focus of the team. It's just like, you can't just put everything on the quarterback because the team, the general manager, and the head coach ultimately decided to trade assets to go up and make a pick for him. Trey Lance didn't do that. Trey Lance didn't decide that. So what does it have to do with Trey Lance? They traded multiple draft picks and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, it happens. It's happened since the history of the beginning of the NFL. That's why Ryan Leaf is who he is, sadly. It's just how it is. So I don't think Trey Lance is a bust. I don't think he's washed. I don't think Sam Darnold is washed. Sam Darnold didn't look that bad in this game. I think you are, if your name is not Patrick Mahomes or Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, like you are a product of your environment to a degree. I think we saw that even with Eli Manning. The years that he won the Super Bowl was because of the defensive runs that they went on. It wasn't really because he had some crazy offense. Like he came clutch and he became very clutch in clutch moments and had crazy plays. But like, I don't think anyone was accusing Eli Manning of being anywhere on the same level as Peyton or Tom. So it's just ridiculous to me, the hate that gets thrown out there. And like I said, from armchair quarterbacks, like I have anything to say about whether or not Trey Lance is a success. Like I'm like some athletic beast here. No, I'm just an oompa loompa in my living room, and so are you. So, you know, if you're the one hating on Trey Lance, that's enough. Otherwise, the only other takeaways I really had from this game, Aiden O'Connell looked solid. He looked like a solid backup, maybe even a potential starter. He went 15 for 18, 141 yards and a touchdown. And number 3, Raiders just put on a complete game. Offense, defense, special teams. The defense looked good. Special teams looked good. And the offense looked good. So, I mean, I've pegged the Raiders for last in this division. I still think that they are going to be competing with Denver for last in the division because that I just think Kansas City and San Diego are just that good. Obviously, we're all hoping Josh Jacobs comes back and plays for the team, but I do think that the Raiders will be a lot more competitive and they're not going to necessarily crater the way that I was maybe considering. Like, you know, I have very clearly Arizona Cardinals finishing last in the league. I had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers not far behind. And then I had the Raiders as kind of a dark horse to be right there with them. And I'm softening a little bit on the Bucs and the Raiders. Still very convinced the Cardinals are going to finish last. Sorry, Cardinals fans. All right, that's it for me. This will be a brand new episode for the reactions all season long. I'll be coming every Monday to recap. I mean, once we get into the season, the schedule is going to change a little bit. Usually I have like the weekly Friday shows. Those are going to have to move up to Thursday, obviously, so that I can get it in before the Thursday night games, help cover, make sure I help everyone with those start-sit decisions. And then Mondays, I'll have combination reaction / waivers. Deuces. Catch you on the flip side.
Is this the